Oh, hi kids, friends of the Annex. It's me, Tama, and it's good to be with you again. I know it's not the same as being together in person, but maybe for now it's the next best thing. I hope you're all finding ways to stay creative and be having fun in this time of social distancing. I want to start by showing you this picture that came in this week by email that shows two girls watching the Annex online. That was last week's episode. And the reason I wanted to start with this picture is because it was these two sisters who taught our class, or at least helped me when I was fumbling with the tune and didn't know the words, the song that we've been opening with. And so in part, these two sisters taught me and taught our class when we were all together that the Spirit of God is in all of us, and that God is in us and we are in God. And that's the song we open with and gather together around. So you know the drill. Pause the video, go find something to play or strum or bang away on, and join Abigail and Oliver for our opening song. That's such a great way to start our time together, being reminded that the Spirit of God is in all of us and is actually what connects us to each other and connects us to all things. We're going to move on to our practices now, what we call our spiritual exercises. I like to think of them as the superpowers of the heart. And we do that by drawing a number each week, and the number corresponds to a different spiritual exercise, a different superpower, if you will. And this week our number is 11. Anybody remember what practice 11 corresponds to? Let's look. Aha! I was right, I thought so. It's the practice of blessing, that beautiful gift of giving blessings and being blessed. Have you ever given anyone a blessing? Or has anyone ever blessed you? It's a beautiful gift that we can give to each other, and it's one of those superpowers I was telling you about. Now, in case you're wondering what do I mean by blessing, we have the sample in the basket here. And this particular clue, this object that helps us to remember this practice, is simply some words in a gold frame. And here's what it says. This is the blessing that we're given. There's a blank, which means I can put in a person's name there. So I'm going to choose the name Charles, because it's the first name that came to my head. Charles, I'm proud to know you, and my life is richer because you came into it. When you were born, the world became a better place, and I'm proud to call you my friend. You know, I've given these blessings to the circle of Annex kids when we've been together. And sometimes it's hard for kids to know how to respond to a blessing. Some look me straight in the eye and say, "Thank you, Tama." And other kids just kind of look down at their feet, a little bit bashful, with a bit of a smile on their face. And other kids just make a goofy face back at me, like, because that's how they respond to being blessed. We all respond in our different way, but in my experience, a blessing is something that sinks deep into our being, kind of like fresh rain that sinks into dry ground. And sometimes we've let it where we go around the circle and we bless the person next to us. So why not try giving a blessing this week? And you know, one spiritual teacher gave me this tip once. If you find it hard or think it would be challenging to give a blessing to somebody you know, like maybe a member of your family or your friend, because you just feel a little bit awkward, or maybe it's kind of unusual or different, then practice on a stone to begin with. Just say stone. And then once you can do it to a stone, then try a blessing with your dog. So I could say, "Mocha, I'm proud to know you, and my life is richer because you are in it," because my dog's name is Mocha. And then when you're feeling like you've got that down, then maybe go find your mom or your dad or brother or sister or one of your friends and try a blessing. You know, I think I have an idea. I'm going to go and see if I can find Abigail. I had Oliver here the last time, and this time I'm going to go look for Abigail, and I'm going to try this blessing on her. And I won't tell her ahead of time, and let's see how she experiences receiving a blessing. Okay, success. I found her. Come on in, Abigail. She was under her duvet listening to music, the way I'm sure many of you are spending your mornings these days. So welcome, Abigail.
Thank you.
To have you in the Annex.
Thank you for having me, guys.
I have to say that making these videos at home wouldn't have been possible without Abigail's help. She's been our tech crew of one, and she's been so helpful, especially in putting the editing of the whole video at the end. So
thank you.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
Let me ask you a bit of a question while you're here. What's been your favorite part of putting on those videos?
I'd have to say my favorite part of editing the videos would be adding in the pictures of the kids each week and getting to see what you guys have been up to, because it kind of makes it feel worth it that I've been spending so much time editing these when I see that you guys are actually interacting with them. But also, of course, me and Oliver singing is one of my favorite parts, because it's so much fun.
Yeah, that's another part Abigail's been helping with, is those opening and closing songs.
Yeah, pretty professional singer over here.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Abigail. I have a gift for you.
Oh, what?
Yeah, to say thank you.
Okay.
It's a blessing.
Oh.
And this is the blessing I want to give you.
Bless me.
Abigail, I'm proud to know you, and my life is richer because you came into it. When you were born, the world became a better place, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Oh, thank you, Mom.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's blessings for you. So go with that blessing seeping into the corners of your life. Okay, well, that was fun. Abigail asked on her way out the door if she could keep the blessing. And I told her, well, this framed copy belongs to the annex, to the class, but that I would give her a handwritten copy of it. So now it's the time for our story. And our story today comes from just one of the Gospels. Remember, there's the 4 Gospels. Our 4 gold scrolls: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And they all tell the story of Jesus, but they tell it, each of them, in a bit of a different way, from a different angle, different perspective, different emphasis. And so this particular story today is only found in the Gospel of Luke. Well, it is found actually in a very condensed version at the end of the Gospel of Mark, but a lot of the scholars think that that was just tagged on after the fact, that it wasn't part of Mark's original telling of the story. And the other thing is that it's the very last story in the Gospel of Luke, and is actually only a few verses long. I'm going to set it up on our scroll here, our scroll stand, and just before we hear the story, just to remind you guys that this has been the period after Jesus has risen from the dead, and he has appeared just a very few times to his disciples. And he's appeared through locked doors and in closed rooms. He's appeared suddenly and then he's disappeared again. And so they've seen very little of him. And now this story is the telling of the last time that they see him in bodily form on the earth. The last time Jesus was with his disciples, he wanted them to understand as fully as they could why he had died. That it's not the way of God to grab power to God's self, to hoard it and to pile it up, to stockpile it, but rather the way of God is the way of giving power away. And that helped them to understand Jesus' death on the cross. It's kind of like a path of descent, a path of going down rather than trying to climb over top of everyone else to the top. And Jesus made it clear to them that it's not the way everybody thinks about God. We tend to think of God as being really powerful and mighty and invincible, and actually you have to turn on its head the way you understand God. But Jesus said, I want you to go out and share this story with as many people as you can, because it's a really important story to understand. And because it's going to be difficult and because people won't believe you, you're going to need some extra courage and some extra strength, some inner strength to help you tell that story. And I'm going to give you a gift. But that gift can only come when I've gone away from you, when I've left you. So what I want you to do is to stay together in Jerusalem, and a gift will be sent to you. And then Jesus took them out to a small town, a place called Bethany, just on the edge of the large city of Jerusalem. And you know what the last thing that Jesus did with his disciples, what that was? He gave them a blessing. Just like we did today in our spiritual practice, just like Abigail received. It doesn't tell us what he said, but it said Jesus blessed each of the disciples. And then it seems that the sky, the clouds came and enveloped Jesus. They lifted Jesus up, a covering of clouds, and carried him away. And when the clouds parted, Jesus was gone, and the disciples were just left looking up at an empty sky. But they were filled with awe and with wonder. And you know where they went? The first place they went? To the temple, because they wanted to give thanks to God and praise God for what they had seen and experienced firsthand. So that's the end of the Luke scroll, and the last story told of the life of Jesus here on earth. So I'm just going to roll that scroll up. We're done with it for the season, along with the other gospel scrolls. And I'm going to tuck them away on the shelf here. And we'll have to wait till next week to see how the story continues and in what form. We're going to turn now to our feelings and just consider the disciples in the story we just heard. If you had to choose, say, 2 or 3 feeling words to put to what you think the disciples might have been feeling, what would they be? Now, you'd think, at least I might have, that words like sad or confused or alone, considering Jesus had now left his followers, you might think that that would be the words that would jump out. But you know, when I read the story, when I reread it to tell it this week, I thought, actually, no. There seems to be a deep sense of what I would say is contentment. They seemed contented. There seemed to be a peace and a calm and an okayness, even though they were living in a time of upheaval and unknown. And there also definitely seemed to be, at the end of the story, just a certain happiness. The disciples went away, it seems, filled with joy, feeling happy. And this is me speculating, but I'm guessing that's because, and maybe especially because of that blessing that they got right at the end, they felt loved. So those are the 3 words I'm going with: content, happy, and loved. Okay, for our creative response, kids, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Since we can't really do our art projects when we're separate from each other, I thought we would do a little science experiment, because sometimes science can help inform things of the Spirit. And you remember Jesus said to his disciples, it's only if I go away that I can be with everyone all the time. If I stay, I can just be with you 12, or you, the larger community that I've been connected with. But by going away and sending you a gift, I can be everywhere all the time. And you think, okay, now how does that make any sense? And so just a very simple bit of science. I'm not much of a scientist, so I'd be nervous to try an experiment that's any more complicated than this. But I have a teaspoon of salt, and left to its own, it's just a teaspoon of salt in a glass of water. But by putting that salt in the water and stirring the water, the Science 101, I confess. But now that salt is gone from the spoon, but is everywhere equally, all at the same time in the water. And if I was to pour this glass of water into a bigger bucket of water and stir it, then the salt would have spread equally everywhere in that larger bucket of water as well, albeit more diluted. But metaphors generally only go so far. So that's maybe one way of understanding, by way of a creative response, how Jesus' departure was in fact a way for Jesus to be present everywhere, all the time, and throughout all of creation. It's kind of a beautiful thought. Well, we've already come to the end of our time together. That seemed to go by super fast today. So let's all gather in our pretend circle and in an imaginary way hold our arms together the way we do in the Annex. And on this, I think it's must be the 6th Sunday of Easter. Let's sing our closing benediction, the way we bless each other. Be not afraid. Christ is risen. Alleluia.
Be not afraid, sing out for joy. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Be not afraid, sing out for joy. Christ is risen. Hallelujah.
And of course, I cannot forget our stones. We have, can you count them? How many are left? 5 stones left in the bottom. So I'm going to take out one and move it over as a way of remembering all the time that we've spent together. You know, and those stones, those pile of stones, remind me of something that happened in the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew scriptures, what we call the Old Testament, when the Hebrew people were crossing the land and they would run into difficulties or challenges, and God was faithful to them and saw them through those difficult times, they would build a small altar or pile of stones. And the reason they did that is so that when in future generations, if their grandkids or their great-grandkids even said to them, Grandpa or Grandma, why are those pile of stones there? It would give them an opportunity to tell a story about one time when God had seen them through a time of difficulty and challenge. So I think our stones are a little bit like that. We're going to get through this pandemic together, and we're going to look back and we're going to remember the faithfulness and goodness of God. Have a good week.